Welcome to the What's Your Deal podcast, where we discuss business acquisitions, investments, management, and exit strategies. I'm your host, Matt Uhler. Let's dive in. So welcome back to another episode of What's Your Deal. I'm joined today with Keira Hamilton, and so grateful to have her. She's joining us from California virtually, and her background is interesting. It brings some higher education that then transitioned into business ownership. And so I'm very excited to dive into the details of exactly how she's been able to accomplish what she has, with her husband being a partner with her. So Keira holds a master's degree in education from UC Berkeley. And she also taught high school English before making an unexpected career change into commercial property management, which is fascinating. We might dive into that as well. And then into business ownership. She and her husband bought their first business in 2023, which was a laundromat located in San Francisco. And then they sold it in 2024 and moved back to San Diego, where they bought their next business, which is a window cleaning company. And outside of work, as hobbies, Keira enjoys yoga, reading, and jujitsu, which makes her dangerous depending on the level of belt she has. So we are grateful to have her. Keira, thank you for joining us so much.
Yeah, Matt, I'm excited to be here, and thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, the way I came across you, frankly, I don't recall. I think it was LinkedIn that I saw a post, and it was maybe about your business or something you had done. And I had asked Sarah in my office to just reach out and see if you wouldn't mind sharing your story with us. And as I understand a little bit more of your story, having my background, I have lots of questions for you about, how things evolved. So maybe we just start with, you end up making a transition from a W-2 job, which so many people in our audience have, to buying your first business. So maybe you can just share with us how that occurred.
Yeah, man, it's quite a story. I'm 32 and I've had several career changes already, way more than I was expecting. I thought I was going to teach high school English for forever. That was the plan. And things ended up differently than that. So my career began teaching high school English. I taught for 5 years up in the Bay Area. And then around COVID time, I decided to transition out of that, kind of randomly through a LinkedIn easy apply button, got into property management and had a career there. And then the business acquisition really started as initially thinking we wanted to buy more real estate, which I'm really glad we didn't. So my husband and I, a few years prior to buying our laundromat, had purchased a rental property up in Oakland. Very challenging investment, but I won't go too much into that. And a few years later, we were initially thinking we had a certain amount of capital to invest, and we were thinking we wanted to invest in more real estate. Thankfully, that didn't end up working out. It was just with what the market was looking like at the time and the amount of capital we had to invest, there just wasn't something that made sense. And so we pivoted into business acquisition. And I think my husband was just kind of like going down YouTube rabbit holes of investing and probably got on the Cody Sanchez train a little bit and was like, laundromats. I will say, I think so much of the information about laundromats online is quite misleading, actually, and we could get more into that. But it began as, sort of this YouTube exploration of how else can we invest this money and how can we do it in a way that isn't going to be a full-time job for us. And the laundromat didn't end up being a full-time job. It was definitely more work than a lot of people think it is. And we were expecting it to be work, but more work than we were anticipating. But that's, I guess, just to answer the question, that's the short answer of it. We can go into whatever seems interesting from there. But the original plan was to buy more real estate, and then we pivoted into business acquisition.
Okay. Yeah. So there's so much great part of what I love about hosting these conversations is there's so much great information that comes out. And one is that real estate investment is a much more proven industry than business acquisition investment. I own real estate rental properties as well, but I also, my greatest returns have come from business acquisitions. And so it's an interesting discussion. And so you started out with a rental property, and it sounds like that wasn't serving your needs. Maybe we put it that way, simply.
It's still not. We still own it.
Okay.
and yeah, overall, I do favor business acquisition more personally. I mean, the story isn't done being written on a rental property, and there are many people who have been successful in real estate. It's not passive income either, in my experience,
Uh-huh.
but I do really like, at least in my experience with business acquisition, just a greater sense of control. That was
Mm,
something that was really frustrating about a rental property. We dealt with an eviction that was really challenging and quite expensive. I just don't have control over market rents in Oakland. So I do prefer business acquisition, I think, just for a greater sense of control over the investment.
yeah. Well, that's great. And so purchasing the laundromat, I've sold quite a few laundromats, and I also have views about them that um, doesn't align with the magical view of laundromat
Mhm.
ownership that's often
Yeah.
presented out there. So let's start with how you found it. Was it a for sale by owner, or was it through a broker? And what intrigued you about that, and how did that play out?
Yeah, so we actually found it on a listing site on Biz by Sell.
Okay.
We got really lucky though, because my husband had called the broker and he had happened to give the name of the establishment, and then he promptly ghosted us. We had provided proof of funds. We were really serious buyers, and I think I've just heard of a lot of people ending up in these situations where it's really hard to get through to the broker and to kind of cut through the other people who are trying to get into this deal. But because we knew the name of the business, after making multiple attempts over, the course of a few days to reach him, we ended up getting in touch with the owners, and the broker was still involved in the transaction. But yeah, it was a pretty straightforward on-market listing.
Okay. It's amazing to me. I hear that all of the time where people have trouble capturing the attention of a broker, a business broker. And
Hmm.
my own story about that is that for 28 years, my career, we have always had way more buyers than we have inventory to sell them. And so, A, it becomes challenging, but B, a lot of brokers just maybe they don't need that buyer anymore. They've already got one, or they've got one they like better or something. But it can be, and I'm assuming in your situation was super frustrating to be ready and prepared to buy something and you can't get a call back. Yeah.
Yes, yes. We actually, shortly after we closed on that laundromat, so he knew we were serious buyers because we had just purchased the laundromat.
Yeah.
We wanted to buy another one, and we reached out to him and got ghosted again on a listing of his. So yeah, I
Wow.
think there are obviously really good business brokers out there. I've also heard a lot of stories of frustrations with gatekeeping. So I really empathize with people who are, looking to buy a business and just having a hard time cutting through, the noise of the situation, whatever
Yeah.
that is. It can be frustrating, but ultimately, we were able to buy it, which is the good news.
That's great. And so I heard you mention proof of funds. Did you end up paying cash for it, or did you end up getting financing for it? How did you complete that transaction?
Yeah. So for both of our business acquisitions, the first laundromat and our window cleaning business, Sunshine Window Cleaning, we got a loan from my mother-in-law. And so
Okay.
we were able to make a cash offer. And I always like to tell people that up front, because I do think it's a huge advantage we've had, is being able to make these cash offers, and financing can be a really challenging part of the transaction. I did broker SBA loans for a while, and we thought we were going to use an SBA loan for our second business acquisition, but it ended up being small enough that we got another family loan. So I know that is something that, a lot of people are trying to figure out, is the financing piece. And I was, privileged enough to be in a pretty advantaged position there.
Yeah, that certainly can move you to the top. So in my world, the transactions I facilitate, about 70% of them, we help buyers obtain the loans through SBA. So we're super familiar with the
Mhm.
process. But if you don't need to go through that process, most don't want to. It's not something people do for fun,
No.
usually. Right. And so you found this laundromat. You clearly liked the financials of it. I mean, it demonstrated a profit that made sense and supported the purchase price, I'm assuming.
Yes, you know, I think my husband and I, with both of our acquisitions, we were just talking about this the other day. We really go back and forth on how to value something. And I
Hmm.
think this is something a lot of people who are looking to buy a business, it's a big question. How do I value this, right? There's different methods. If you're getting an SBA loan, it ultimately is going to come down to the cash flow. And does the lender see the historical cash flow there to support the debt? And can you get comfortable with the DSCR? When you're buying something with cash, it could be a little bit of a different calculation. But ultimately, The value of a business is what someone is willing and able to pay for it. And it really just comes down to that. There is no hard objective science when it comes to valuing a business. And so I say this because, there have been times when we looked back at the laundromat and we were like, did we overpay for that? Like just looking at the numbers perspective, because as far as multiples go, we bought it for 190 and we bought it at about a 4x, which
Okay.
is high for, a business of that size, traditionally when you're talking about valuing businesses. And then we sold it for 300, also at about a 4x. But it's also, we wanted a laundromat. We wanted a laundromat in the Bay Area. We wanted to buy a business in a certain period of time. And same with buying our window cleaning company. We wanted to buy a business in San Diego. We wanted to buy a service-based business in a certain period of time. And there's sort of, especially when you put geographical constraints on something like a search, you have to be flexible in other things, right? You can't have everything on your wish list. And so I do think there was a huge value to us, not just in the financials of the business, but in being able to meet this goal. Like, I think it's exhausting to search. I don't like searching for a business. It's like searching for a job. It's not fun. Like, I actually do love getting into data rooms and getting into spreadsheets. And like, I like that part, but the like cold calling business owners and the disappointment when someone doesn't get back to you and they're like, when is this going to end? When am I going to essentially start my new career? That's exhausting. So I think there is a huge value to us in our laundromat. We started searching in February and we closed in May. And our window cleaning business, we started searching in February again and we closed in July, which are relatively short search periods. So there is a huge value to us in speed and thinking about how much runway do we have for the search, but then how much runway do we have for the first few months when we're planning on making more investments, right? So I know this is a long way of answering your question, Matt, but just kind of the value of a business, I like to tell people, like, it really isn't just about the numbers. It's about what is the value of it to you at this particular time in your life. So I do think we bought the laundromat at a somewhat high multiple for that size of business, but I also think laundromats are very popular. And we were like, we want to get in the game. Like, there's competition out here. We want to take this thing off the streets, So I think that I'm glad we bought it for what we did so that we could move forward. And I'm happy with what we sold it for.
Yeah, that's great. Well, there's a lot there. So let me pull that apart a little bit. I think one of the things you shared, which is so important, is a lot of times people are focused on they've got to negotiate or they've got to get the best deal. And I think getting a good deal that makes financial sense, especially with a business, is super important. But what you alluded to, which I think is worth pointing out again, is that there's so little inventory. And trying to find the right business with the right financial picture in the specific area that makes the money you want, it's limited. And in my experience, there are no comps to speak of. And so back to your valuation question, I certainly look at business valuation as an art and a science and the math and all of that, but there's not another one. It's not like there's 3 homes that are all the same. I mean,
it's not like real estate. No.
Yeah. And so an individual buyer's perception of value is what's most important to them. And then from my perspective, as long as it makes financial sense where they can continue to thrive, at some point you just pull the trigger like you and your husband did, it sounds like. And yeah, I had a buyer not too long ago who the seller wanted more than what I thought made financial sense. They got it financed. The appraisal came in low and the buyer still decided to proceed and has done extremely well with it. And it didn't check some of those boxes, but he knew what he could do. So, yeah. So you alluded to that some of the aspects of the laundromat weren't as advertised or, as social media might portray. So what did you learn? Yeah. What were some of the surprises that were disappointing?
I would say that most of it wasn't a complete surprise. We didn't think it was going to be passive income. And that is the biggest problem I have with laundromat influencers, telling people it's passive income. I really don't like that. And a big reason why I started my YouTube channel was to combat that misinformation. They just want you to buy their course, is the thing. So yeah, I would say just kind of maybe the degree to which it's not passive income and the number of problems we had to deal with. I think the biggest challenge for us was distance. So we lived in Oakland at the time, and the laundromat was in San Francisco. And if you're hitting traffic across the bridge, it might be over an hour to get in.
Wow.
And when there are problems at a laundromat, some of them need a pretty immediate fix. You have a machine that's leaking water all over the floor. And that didn't just happen with old machines, that happened with new machines, customers not treating the machines well, just an error, whatever the case may be. Someone needs to fix that quickly. We didn't have staff there all hours that the laundromat was open. So if you're buying a fully staffed laundromat, I think that's helpful to have staff there always, I think. And then the second part, so the distance was, I would say, overall the most challenging thing, but really where the complexity comes in is with the wash and fold service. So there is a big difference between a completely self-service laundromat and one with a wash and fold service. When you have a wash and fold service, now you need an intake system. Now you need somewhere to store the clothes. Now you probably have some sort of pickup and delivery system. And that just adds a whole other layer to it. So, if we had an employee call out sick last minute at 8 a.m, one of us was rearranging our schedule for the day to go into the city to fold clothes. We didn't have that many people on the payroll to call on. So I think that there's just kind of this idea with laundromats that you're going to buy it as an investment and it's going to sit there nice and cute and polite and make you money. And that's just not how businesses are. Like a laundromat is still a small business. It requires attention. It requires money. It requires someone answering the phone, So if you are, and I come across these people all the time in consulting work that I do, if you're planning to keep your full-time job, you need a plan. Does your mom live in the area? Can she be the one that's on call when there are problems at your laundromat? Do you have other family or, do you have very reliable employees? I think sometimes people will also make the mistake of thinking, well, I'm buying this laundromat and there are all these employees in place and kind of adding that to their valuation of the business. But the thing is, there's no guarantee those people are going to stay. And most likely there's going to be some level of turnover whenever you buy a business, right? Just you should be prepared for that. And so even though there are employees in place now, when you buy the business, most likely there's going to be some amount of turnover. And most likely you're going to be responsible for training those people, depending on what you've negotiated with the seller. So again, if you're working a full-time job and you're thinking, great, this laundromat has 3 employees and everything's fully functioning and I'm just going to buy it and it's going to continue as is, I wouldn't make that bet that that's going to happen.
Well, it's so funny you bring that up because one of my pet peeves is that I use the term proximity, but proximity matters. And like you alluded to, there's such a popular trend these days to, you buy it and run it absentee and just have a key employee or something. And the truth is exactly what you described, which is as an owner, and I've seen this in the businesses that I have an ownership interest in, things change, people change, circumstances change. And if I'm too far away from that business to be able to serve it well when needed, not if needed, but when.
Yep, when.
Oh my gosh, it can just become an enormous burden. And so, yeah, I appreciate you kind of, verifying some of the things that are just real world stuff that so often is not what's out there. I mean, as a broker, I've had a call recently from a gentleman who wanted to buy an HVAC company, again, popular business online. He lives in Pennsylvania and intends to run it absentee and has got no experience. And I'm just like, please do not. Like, this is a recipe for catastrophic failure, So anyway, it's fascinating that you're sharing these things. So one of the other things that's interesting about what your experience is that you sold it in less than a year. And it sounds like for quite a bit more money. So how did that happen? And when did you decide like, okay, time for an exit, we're out?
Yeah. It was actually a little over a year. It was 16 months, but relatively short period of time, as you know, as far as exiting a business. So there were a few things that had changed. I mean, when we bought the laundromat, my husband and I were planning on being in the Bay Area for the foreseeable future. And just some personal changes in our life. We realized that we wanted to move back to San Diego, where we're from, before we have kids, be closer to family. And, career stuff had changed for us. I was originally thinking I was going to be a teacher in the Bay for forever. And we came to this point where we just realized that if we wanted to get to the point where we could hand over the phone, which that would have been like the magical step to not making the business passive, but making it a little more hands off, right? If we wanted to be able to pass the phone over to a quality manager that we could pay a market rate, we needed to buy more locations. The cash flow of that one location just wasn't going to support it. I'm sure there are some laundromats out there that are big enough to afford a full-time manager, but there are a lot of smaller operations too. And so we actually initially, I mentioned this earlier, did want to buy more laundromats. We were looking at a few in the city, but then we were like, okay, if we really want to make this work, we have to double down. Like we've got to move to the city. We have to get rid of this proximity problem. We have to be able to be the manager ourselves of, let's say we buy 2 more locations. We have to be the manager ourselves for a while, figure out what does this role really look like? Who's the right person we hire for this, etc. And we just didn't want to move to the city. And we were like, this does not make sense to keep living in Oakland and buying more laundromats in San Francisco. And just like the practicality of it wasn't there. And I think the timeline as well, like I think there was a certain amount of luck involved with buying our first laundromat within a few months. And we were like, can we get, lucky like that again with 2 more? And will we be able to accomplish our goals in the timeline that we're looking for? The person that we sold it to, actually, his plan was basically exactly that: buy multiple locations, hire a manager, right? Mm-hmm. But he wanted to stay in the city. He had family there. So it was he's awesome. And he's doing really well with it now. And it was really great to transition it to him, because it was like, that's the person you need in place. Like that was our plan had we not wanted to move. So yeah, it just came to a point where it was like fork in the road. Either we double down or we sell it and we move to San Diego and we buy a different business, which is what we ended up doing.
Well, it's pretty amazing. I mean, I usually coach people that to not count on a business being a liquid asset. I mean, it, as you alluded to, it can take a long time. And so at what point did you decide you wanted to sell it? And did you use a broker? Did you market it on your own? And again, really pretty quick, regardless of the answers to all of those. Still a very quick transition. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think from the time that we really decided to sell it and we put a listing up to when we sold it was only a couple months. A big part of that was we found a cash buyer, which makes the process go faster. We listed it ourselves. And I think that I actually did some pretty unique things that I think helped move it along faster. So just in my experience looking at businesses and working with people trying to get SBA loans, it can be difficult to really get the information that you need to make a decision as a buyer. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you might not even get a P&L until after you sign an LOI. I was like, I want to sell this thing fast and I want to find the right buyer and I don't want to mess around with someone submitting an LOI and then not being serious. So I'm putting everything up front. I made a data room, and if someone signed an NDA, they got my tax returns, they got my P&Ls, they got all my utilities bills, they got all my revenue reports, and they got a 30-minute video of me with a presentation on Canva being like, these are the operations of the laundromat. These are the problems that it has. These are the things you should be mindful of. These are the things that are going really well. These are the things that you're going to want to consider as a buyer. Because again, I wanted to find the right person as quickly as possible. And I don't think we even ended up having an LOI. We just went straight to a purchase agreement. And there wasn't really a due diligence period because I put everything in this Google Drive folder. So it was like, if you're making me an offer, you have everything that you could have. So make an offer that you can stand by and let's move forward.
Well, that's great. There is a trend with some brokers to require an LOI before they release any information, as you alluded to. Our approach as brokers is the same. I mean, we try to give everything that a buyer would need in order to make a financial decision they can follow through with. We don't want to start over and over again. And even though we'll redact financials and so on and so forth to protect the confidential information, it's really allows somebody to move forward as opposed to playing this game of writing LOIs and negotiating and renegotiating and all of that. So yeah, it was really smart on your part to be able to move along that way. And
Yeah,
yeah,
it worked out well. And I guess I should say we did require NDA and proof of funds.
yep.
We didn't, so that, it wasn't everyone who would, I don't know how I'm doing. I just made
Yeah,
balloons go. I don't know how that happened. So it wasn't like everyone who reached out. And we did have, I don't remember how many, but hundreds of people reach out. So there are a lot of
yeah.
people to sift through. But I do think we were able to move quickly because of the nature of a cash buyer and because of the way I had just set up the listing in the data room.
That's excellent. And so I believe, if I heard you correctly, you sold it for quite a bit more money, but a similar multiple. So did you actually improve the cash flow of the business in that short of a period of time, or how did that play out?
Yeah, so we had improved the SDE. I would say though, the more valuable thing in it was improving the operations.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, when we went in there, it was just like sticky notes everywhere. Those were the SOPs, some sticky notes in the office. And it was similar buying or window cleaning business as far as a lot was up in the old noggin of the seller, and so I think that is something that I've learned to look for in businesses, and that I really encourage people who are looking to buy a business to look at is like, what is coming with it as far as organization and systems, and not just systems that someone can describe to you, but things that are written down, things that they can hand to you, right? So when we sold the laundromat, I had a 9-tab Excel sheet, and it was everything from this is how you process a wash and fold order, to this is how you do dry cleaning, to these are the most common questions people ask when they call on the phone, and here's how to answer them. And none of that was there before. And so I really feel like the value I bring as an operator, and this a lot I think goes back to my time as a teacher, is like getting things in order, right? Like writing the ship, writing things down, making it so that I can justify this, relatively high multiple for this size of business, because I'm like, this is ready to go. Like, this is ready to grow. I don't want to be the one to do it. Like, I'm not the person to take the business from here, but I did get everything organized and clear so that you can be the one to do that.
Well, that's great. It's actually kind of serendipitous. We just recorded a podcast episode on how to prepare your business for exit. And the things you're describing fit exactly right in. Of course, it worked. I mean, you proved it. And that's what I've seen over 28 years. It's not super complicated, but either a lot of business owners just don't have the wherewithal to want to do it, or the desire, whatever it might be, but it works. And you just improved your net worth by demonstrating it works, simply by putting those operational attributes in place that were not there. So yeah, it's humorous timing actually for our conversation. So.
Yeah. It's like you're saying, it's really not that complicated. Is it easy for everyone depending on their personality and what they like to do? No, I happen to just love to get in there and organize stuff. But the other thing I would say that we did that I think I've seen be a challenge in a lot of transactions is building trust. That is key, because I'm sure, as you've seen, Matt, things can get messy. It's very emotional, or it can be very emotional for people buying and selling a business. And so I think that I really just wanted to lead with transparency. Like when I created that video, it was like, I said up front, these are the problems. Like, these are the things that I find annoying about this business. It might be different for you, but these are the things that I think will be challenging, because the truth is that every business has problems. Every business has problems. That's the nature of it. And you make more money the more complicated problems you can solve, right? That's the whole thing. And so I always encourage people, when they're going to buy a business, to ask the seller, tell me 3 problems you've dealt with in the last month. And how they answer that question will tell you so much about the business and about them. If they say, I don't know, I can't think of
Haven't
no
had
problems
any.
in the last month. Oh, that is BS. That's ridiculous, But if they answer that question, in a more honest way, which is to say, yeah, like, these are the problems. For me with the laundromat, it would have been like, we do, I'd say 95% of the time, pickup and delivery works well, but there are some times when a driver doesn't show up and I have a customer calling me, right? There are some times when employees call out sick and I have to go in, right? This and this issue is happening with the machines, right? By saying that up front to my buyer, I am not only giving them an accurate idea of what they're getting into, but I'm developing trust. And that trust ends up becoming really important when you're about to wire someone $300,000 in exchange cash in exchange for their business, right? So I think on both the buyer and the seller side, trust is important, and honestly, just likability. I think sometimes buyers go in with a little bit of a maybe like a little bit of a front, a little bit of a I'm trying to negotiate and I'm trying
Uh-huh.
to show you that I'm real smart finance guy. And it's like, no, dude, you have to be likable. That's the number one, your first goal when you're meeting a seller. Be
Yeah.
likable. Like the numbers can come later.
Yeah. We have a policy in our brokerage firm that we will not accept an offer until the buyer and seller have at least had a conversation and ideally a
Mm,
meeting, because it's not a car, it's not a house. You have to have, in my opinion, you have to have that relationship that's going to carry forward. And I also believe exactly what you just said, which is that from a buyer's perspective, they don't trust the seller. It's time to go home. It is not worth getting into such a significant financial decision with somebody you may not like or get along with or trust, to your point. So it sounds
yeah.
like you offered trust through the transparency. So people came to you with a feeling of confidence about what you were presenting simply because you opened the books. You had it
Yeah.
available. Yeah. Yeah, that's
hmm
great.
I think so. Again, I wanted to move quickly. And I was like, how do you move quickly? You need people to trust you.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. So you exited that business and was there a 30-day training period or familiarization, or how did the transition happen once you closed?
Yeah, it was kind of funny timing because our buyer was going to Burning Man. And so we ended up closing and we wanted to close as soon as possible. So we were like, okay, let's close. You go to Burning Man. We'll keep managing the business for 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
And then I think we had a 2 week training period. But to be honest, I wasn't a stickler about it. I
Yeah.
was like, I'll be here for as long as I'm not counting the days. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make sure that you're good to go before we're out of here because I want you to be successful. I want this to feel good for everyone. I want this business to continue to thrive. So I'm pretty sure it's the 2 week management period and then a 2 week training period. But we weren't even there every day for 2 weeks. It didn't take that long because I just
Mm-hmm.
tried to be really efficient with it. And then we did stuff by phone as well.
Oh, that's great. Well, and you had all the documentation at that point operationally. So
hmm
that's great. So then the second business that you purchased that you're still operating. So
Yeah.
was that a bigger business from a standpoint of staff or anything along those lines? It sounds like you paid cash for that as well, so it didn't have the complexities of an SBA. But how did that evolve? Was it listed or for sale by owner?
Yeah, so this one, just from an SDE and a purchase price perspective, was bigger than the laundromat, but still relatively small business. We
Okay.
bought it for under 500, and but it was a lower multiple. This one was a lower multiple. How we found it was cold calling. We were
Really?
just calling up businesses in San Diego saying, "Hey, is the owner there? Do you want to sell?"
Uh-huh.
And then we actually had a decent amount of success with that. And when we would, get an owner who was interested, we tried to get as quickly as possible to an in-person meeting. Kind of going back to your point earlier, is like you have to vibe check each other
Mm-hmm.
and be like, is this even going to work to move forward? Right? Because nothing else really matters unless we can do business together.
Mm-hmm.
So we would buy them coffee or buy them lunch and just have a conversation, learn about their background, learn about the business. And so yeah, with this one, we had just been calling people. We weren't necessarily targeting window cleaning. We had originally been looking at more like residential, commercial, sort of janitorial housekeeping services, but then we opened it up just to more service-based businesses because as I mentioned, we had constrained ourselves to San Diego. We're like, we came back here, we're not leaving. And so we have to be flexible with other things. We initially set out wanting to buy a larger business.
Okay.
And a lot of people, I mean, I could go off more on this, but a lot of people, at least I would say in sort of like the search space on LinkedIn, are looking for minimum 800 million EBITDA.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, they've never operated a business or had an employee. So again, could go into why that doesn't seem like a great idea. But we had originally wanted to buy a larger business. But again, it came down to there's only so much on the market. And there's only so much even off the market, because this is technically like an off market deal that's available. But it really just kind of ended up being this perfect timing where this guy was already planning to make a career change. He had the opportunity to become a pastor, and it was something he wanted to do his whole life. And he finally like had the opportunity to do it. And so he needed to sell his business within the next few months, and he hadn't listed it yet. And we just happened to intersect. So again, I think there's a certain amount of luck involved, but then I think that it's also, you have to be prepared to take advantage of that luck.
Yeah, absolutely. When it sounds like you did. And so it's, I'm familiar with the approach where people will literally pull from the market. Somebody, just go out and find what you want, which is what you did. Sometimes in those situations, the seller doesn't know what it's worth, or has an overinflated idea what it's worth, or doesn't have anything prepared. But it also sounds like you moved through that pretty quickly, successfully.
As far as coming to like a valuation and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that part was challenging. I think that, a lot of times with these smaller sized businesses, there aren't necessarily all the systems in place. There aren't necessarily the cleanest books. There were a lot of questions and a lot of back and forth about the financials, and coming to a really confident conclusion about like, this is the perfect valuation wasn't really, I don't know if that's really possible with any business, but I think we did our best to understand the financials. We did our best to answer as many questions as we could about them. We did our best to value it on the financials in a traditional sense of like a multiple based on the SDE. But then I think beyond that, as I was saying earlier, we were like, hey, we are 6 months into searching. We have this much amount of runway to keep, because we were doing it full time. We have this much amount of runway to keep searching and looking for a business. We can keep using up that runway, searching for a business, and not know when it's going to end. There are people searching for a business for 2 years, and San Diego is a very popular place. There are other buyers out here. So we can do that, or we can make the best decision we can with the information that we have. We can take a calculated risk. We can look at the skills that we have and look at the opportunity in front of us and say, you know what? I don't know exactly what I'm getting into. And the truth is, you'll never know exactly what you're getting into until you take the plunge. But I believe I have the skill set to make something of this opportunity. And there is a lot of value to me in taking this opportunity now. Because if I keep searching, I'm eating up my runway. If I buy this business now, I can put that runway towards these investments that need to be made to really take the business to the next level. And I think just from an emotional perspective, there's so many times when like any business that you run, anyone who's bought a business can tell you, like in the beginning, it's hard. It's hard to transition a business. It's hard to learn a new industry. There was so much about buying this business that was hard. And we expected it to a degree. I think it was harder than we were expecting, but anytime there's a really hard day, my husband and I will look at each other and we're like, at least we're not searching. At least we're not still searching for a business. Like there has not been a single day when I would have rather been searching for a business than doing whatever like crazy, busy, difficult thing I was doing. So I think that I see a lot of people who have been searching for a while. And sometimes there's a reasonable reason for that. Like, they're working a full-time job and they have a family and they're doing this part-time. So of course it's going to take more than a year, right? And then there are some people who are doing it full-time and it's taking them a while. And I just think at some point you got to look at yourself and be like, do you really feel ready to do this? Like, I don't think it ever feels easy. And I don't think it ever feels certain. Like whenever I've made a career change or bought a business, I was never like, yep, 100%, I got this. It was always, this is going to be hard and there are going to be known unknowns and there are going to be unknown unknowns, but I believe in myself enough to push forward. And so I do think there's a certain amount of, you got to take the leap, because that emotional drag of searching can really wear on you. And that energy that we were putting into a search, we got to shift and put into this business instead. And like building this business is the thing that's moving us forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's great. There's a lot there as well, and the timing. I'm working with a client right now who was searching for 10 years before that's a long time, and that it can be a lot of lost opportunity, and especially if you become unemployed or are unemployed, then the pressure becomes that much greater. So, did the gentleman that you bought the window cleaning company from have an asking price, or did you come up with a price that here's what makes sense? I mean, was that a difficult conversation, or which came first?
He had an initial number that he had thrown out, and then we did do some back and forth. And there was also some back and forth about the structure. We had talked about a seller note at one point because we were kind of deciding whether or not we were going to go SBA or go the family loan route. So there were a few different structures involved. And yeah, I think there's so much to negotiating that is really about a lot more than the numbers. I'm sure you've read the book or heard of the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I definitely recommend that one to anyone who's looking to buy or sell their business. It gives such practical techniques for negotiating. We definitely use them when we sold our laundromat and when we bought our business. So yeah, there was some back and forth on the price. It was relatively quick though, because like I said, we met the seller for the first time. It was the day before Mother's Day, so in May, and then we closed in July. So it was pretty quick. But yeah, it was sort of a volley back and forth as far as the purchase price and structure.
That's great. So you went from fixed location with the laundromat to significant human resources with labor. How many employees do you employ now?
We have 3 employees.
3, okay. So not 30 where you're chasing them all over the county, right? But enough. Yeah. And do you provide residential and commercial, or what kind of services do you provide?
Yeah, so we're primarily in residential. We do a lot of work in Coronado, which is a city in San Diego County, but throughout San Diego, and we do some commercial as well. And that is our next challenge. That's the next thing that we're going for, is getting more commercial accounts. That's what my whole day has been about today. So definitely want to get more into commercial.
Very good. Great. Well, and you talked about making other investments. So do you intend to roll up more window cleaning businesses, or are you looking for more real estate, or what's your future hold if you could paint that picture?
Absolutely no more real estate ever again. I mean, that's what I say now. We'll see. I mentioned we have made a challenging real estate investment, which sometimes people make real estate investments and the fact that you have less control ends up being in your favor, right? Like the market improves and you didn't have to do anything. But I just really like that I have more of a sense of control over business acquisition. Now, whether or not we grow through acquisition is an interesting question. It's something that we've talked about, and definitely something that I would consider. I do though, I just respect the complexity of it, I think. I think sometimes people might underestimate just culturally, taking 2 businesses and merging them together, and then system-wise doing that, getting them all in the same CRM, getting all your techs, figuring out how to work together, your SOPs. So I think I don't underestimate the challenge of it. And it's not to say that we would never do it, but I kind of weigh what is the faster and more capital efficient way to grow? I think growing through acquisition could be one option, but I feel like we want to give kind of our best shot at making the most out of this opportunity first. And really, I mean, we're only in month 5 right now, which is wild because I feel like I've lived 10 years in the last 5 months, just the amount of things we've been up to. But it's not off the table, another acquisition.
That's great. Well, so let me ask you one more or a couple more questions, but we'll start to wrap up here because I know we're getting close to our time. Did you have direct industry experience, transferable industry experience with the window cleaning? And are you the one out meeting with customers and bidding jobs? What was that transition like?
Oh boy, I have absolutely zero window cleaning experience. I've never even hired a window cleaning service.
Okay.
So in the beginning, my husband and I were working in the business full time, and it kind of just ended up being a unfortunate, but ended up being fortunate, actually, I think, series of events where it was like the seller had 3 employees. And then a few weeks before we bought the business, he had fired one. I thought justifiably, like based on how he described the situation. And then maybe a week or two before we were going to close, somewhere around there, another employee had to leave for personal reasons, so he was down to one employee. And he was like, hey, do you guys want to come start working in the business tomorrow? And we were like, well, we thought we had 2 more weeks to kind of chill before we did this thing, but you know what, I guess we're starting tomorrow. So we had kind of a violent shift in our life where the next morning we were waking up and we were cleaning windows and we were pressure washing and we were up on roofs cleaning and just really headfirst into it. And it was probably the most stressful period that we've ever been through. And my husband and I have been together since high school, 15 years. Like, we've done a lot of different things together.
Yeah.
And this was one of the hardest because it was, working. We started in the peak season. Summer is the busiest time for window cleaning and pressure washing here in San Diego. So we would be working, 8 to 10 hours a day, just doing the physical work. And then we'd be coming home and being like, okay, how do we set up insurance? And like, we got to transfer the vehicles, and like, we still need to close and all this stuff. So that was really exhausting. We worked probably for 2 months in the business, not at that pace the whole time, because we did hire people. But then there was figuring out the right person for the right seat. That was a whole journey, figuring out who our team lead was supposed to be. Once we found the right team lead, that transformed things. And it's been months now since we cleaned. So we've, graduated to estimators, I guess, or general managers. So we are still going out and giving estimates when need be. We're still on the phone. But the thing that I really like about this business compared to the laundromat is it's just not open as many hours. The laundromat was open 7 to 10 every day of the year. And so if the phone is ringing, I was always worried the laundromat's on fire if someone's calling. The laundromat was never on fire. That was just always my fear. But with this business, it's like, if my guys aren't out working, like there cannot be an emergency. There can't be anything happening if they're not at a house. So we actually just this week engaged some services to help us with sales. So we've got an AI team now helping us with some cold outreach, and a cold caller who's already gotten us in the last 2 days a number of good commercial leads. So we're starting to figure out like who are the people that we need to put in our team, where is our skill set best spent, and where do we outsource?
Okay, that's great. So how long did you work in the business before you closed on it?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Oftentimes buyers and sellers will come up with an arrangement like that. And oftentimes a buyer will decide, okay, now that I've taken it for a real test drive, I don't want it anymore. It's different than what I thought, or that kind of thing. So it sounds like for you and your husband, you described it being, one of the toughest times you've had. You still decided it was the right move to make and to continue.
I think you can always find a reason to say no. I think that when you're doing a big, scary thing like buying a business, there's always going to be one, if not more than that, reasons to say this isn't going to work. And kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, I think so many people like don't end up buying a business or end up searching for, a year or two more than that because they find a reason to say no. And I'm not saying to not calculate your risk or to make a quick, foolish decision. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there might always be a feeling of like, is this the right thing to do? But that doesn't necessarily mean don't do it. It just means that you have to be brave and you have to believe in your skill set. And if you're having too much of that feeling, like, it might mean you're not ready. It might mean you don't have the skill set to go to this next thing. But I think even though it was really hard, we were like, you know what? This isn't our first rodeo. It's not going to be like this forever. We looked at the opportunity. We looked at the market. And I think we thought like, you know what? This guy has been making money. Like he was supporting his family for years with this business.
Uh-huh.
So we were like, you know what? If he's been making money doing this and it's been running his particular way, I think that, he even said that we're a bit more organized than him. And I think we're more systems oriented than him. If he was making money with it like this, we can definitely make money at this. Like
Yeah.
we can turn this into something great. It's going to take some time to get it to where we want it. But again, didn't want to go back to searching.
I was going to
so
say,
we were
yeah.
like, onward.
Yeah. So, and that was what I was thinking as you were sharing, that the alternative would be to go back to searching. And so clearly you didn't see anything in the 2 weeks, even though it was hard, that was a deal breaker. It just was information and education, and you used that to help propel you towards what sounds like a more efficient business now than even 4 months ago when you bought it.
It absolutely is. And I think, what would have been way worse is taking that really hard period and going like, you know what, this isn't for us. And then going back to searching and spending another 6 months doing that and eating up more of our confidence and our ability to close and eating up our runway and then buying another small business and having that be really hard. Right. Yeah. And just being like, why don't we just stick with the first one? Transitions are hard. This one was harder than we were expecting, but we made it through and we're not on the glass anymore. And, our guys go out and they do a great job and we get great customer feedback. And like now we're in the next phase of growing to the next thing. And I'm really glad we stuck with it because I wouldn't still want to be searching.
Yeah, that's great. So 2 last questions. I'm going to share them both with you up front so you have a minute to ponder the second one, okay? But the first one is there's lots of couples that can't work together, shouldn't work together, don't thrive working together. Clearly, you and your husband do. And then the second question, which give you a little bit of runway to ponder, is that I finish all of my podcasts asking people who in their life gave them a hand up. And for me, it's about bringing back to gratitude, but it's so easy, especially with social media and everything looks polished and perfect, to forget that nobody got there on their own. And so as the second question, I'd love it if you would share with us just an example of somebody who's made a difference for you or helped you get where you are and where you wanted to be. So, but first questions first. So how do you and your husband do it? Has it always been that way, or does it take significant collaboration to synchronize together?
That's a great question. So, like I mentioned, we've been together since high school. We had our 15-year anniversary in September. So we've had a lot of time to practice together as a team. Like we've gone through going to different colleges and then being back in the same place. And we both have had career transition. So this was not our first time doing a hard thing together. But it is really challenging. I mean, like we used to have separate careers and separate work lives. But I do think there's so much about being married that requires a lot of the same skills as running a business together, of managing financial responsibility, like managing a household, managing a whole life together. I always say just, even for people who aren't married, I never recommend buying a business with someone you wouldn't be willing to go to therapy with. It is a hard thing running a business.
Yeah.
And if you're just like picking someone from your MBA program and being like, you and me, let's do this, really think about that decision. My husband and I have hard conversations all the time. And I think that's the thing, is getting good at having hard conversations, knowing like, how do I share my feelings about this situation with you in a way that is both authentic and feels okay for both of us? How do I hear your feelings that might be hard for me to hear? Where do we draw the line between when we're talking about personal and when we're talking about business, and when those are just the same thing, because they sometimes are. So I think it's a constant negotiation of how we figure this out together. And our working relationship has looked different over time from when we bought the laundromat to now. But I love it so much. It's my favorite thing about this journey is doing with it with him because he's the best business partner and he's my best friend and we work super well together. Like that's actually how we met in high school. We were seat partners in physics and we would do really hard physics problems together and like really struggle through them. And I was like, oh, this is someone I can work with. Like if you can do a group project, in physics with someone, that might be a good business partner. But it is definitely challenging. But I think, if there are other like couples out there or even business partners who aren't couples listening to this, like it's okay for it to be hard and it's okay to have a lot of hard conversations. They just need to be productive. Like, are you moving forward with them or are you moving backward? And as long as you're moving forward, then I think that's the point.
Yeah.
So that's the answer to that. And then as far as, who's helped me get here? I mentioned earlier, having financial help has been such a huge thing. Both of my husband's parents have helped us financially in buying real estate and buying our business. And I'm so grateful for that because a lot of people have the barrier of, even just having a hard time getting a loan, right? And so family financing, the due diligence is a lot easier. The underwriting is a lot easier. So I'm very advantaged in that way. And honestly, I know this is your last question, but like my husband is the reason that I'm doing this too. I wouldn't be buying a business on my own. I wouldn't be operating a business on my own. Like there are some people who can do that and want to do that. And that's fantastic. But I want to have a partner and he's the perfect partner for this. So I give so much credit to him and to us as a team. It's really not just me doing this. It's us as a team and the advantages that we've had. And then I think just like the other experiences that I've had along the way, I think being a teacher and opportunities that I was given as a teacher and the people that I worked with and the great bosses that I've had over the years. That's something that's really important to me is being a good boss and creating a positive work environment for people. So other bosses that I've had that have modeled that for me, I'm really grateful for now.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm not surprised you mentioned your husband, just, getting a sense of how you work together. And I have quite a few partners as well. And I much prefer a team as opposed to a Lone Ranger approach. And when you add the marital aspect to it, it's a whole nother level. And I also think the other piece you shared, which is coincidental as well, we had an episode earlier on the value of coaching and accountability. And that gets built into the accountability piece when it's your partner in life, but also being willing to get a coach. And you referred to therapists, but we all do better sometimes with outside influence and coaching. And so, well, great stuff. I really appreciate you joining us today and being willing to share your journey with us because there's so many little tidbits in there that are valuable. And especially for somebody who's trying to navigate whether this is for them or not and how to do it in a way that still leaves a smile on their face at the end, like you have.
Yes, a lot of tears too. Okay. There have been a lot of tears as well, but it's worth it, I think.
Yeah, very good. Well, we appreciate you joining us today. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Matt. This was a super fun conversation and just looking forward to staying connected.
Very good. Well, thank you for joining us on today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it and again, picked up some more valuable insights that will aid you in your journey to owning a business and thriving in that area. We'll see you on the next episode. And that's a wrap on today's episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and got some valuable insights into the world of buying and selling businesses. Want to be a guest on our show? If you have a deal that you'd like to discuss with us or a business story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email using the contact information below in the episode notes, and let's make this happen. Never miss an episode. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you found today's episode helpful, please leave us a review. It helps more people like you find the show.